In 1947, a widow named Esperanza lived in a two-room adobe on the east side of San Antonio with 5 children and a kerosene lamp she lit only after dark. She earned $11 a week scrubbing floors at a downtown hotel. She paid rent. She fed 6 people. She kept her children in shoes. By 1956, she owned the house outright. Her neighbors assumed a brother in California had been sending money. He had not. What she had was a tin can buried under the kitchen floor, and a set of rules her own mother had carried out of Coahuila in 1910. The neighbors never saw the can. They were not supposed to. They managed money differently. Not with bank accounts or credit, but with quiet rituals that crossed the border in the apron pockets of women who had already outlived one revolution. Those rituals kept families fed through the Depression, the Repatriation, 2 wars, and decades when a brown name on a loan application was a closed door. We abandoned every one of them the moment the 3rd generation decided that speaking Spanish in public was the same thing as being poor. These were not tricks. They were a discipline, never written down, never explained to outsiders. Number 19 cost less than a dime and saved the average household over $50 a year. Number 11 was practiced in every Mexican kitchen until food companies spent 40 years convincing women it was beneath them. And number 2, the rule more abuelas enforced than any other, built more small homes in the Southwest between 1920 and 1960 than any government program ever did. These 25 habits were not about being cheap. They were about never being caught with empty hands in a country that had already taken the land. Hit subscribe. Let us count down the 25 forgotten penny-stretching tricks Mexican grandmothers used when nobody was looking. Number 25. The comal that never went cold. A Tejana mother in El Paso kept her cast-iron comal on the stove from sunrise to sundown. Tortillas in the morning, reheated beans at noon, roasted chiles at dusk. The comal cost $1.40 in 1938 and lasted 41 years. Anglo neighbors thought the constant fire was wasteful. It was the opposite. 1 fire, 3 meals. The comal was not equipment. It was the second member of the marriage. Number 24. The masa from scratch. A Sonoran abuela in Tucson nixtamalized her own corn every Saturday in a clay pot with cal and water. 25 pounds of dried maize cost 38 cents. The same corn ground at the molino into masa cost $1.20. Ready tortillas at the panaderia cost $3.10. She did the work herself. She saved $2.72 a week. Across a year, $141. Her labor was not free. She had simply decided who would profit from it. Number 23. The frijoles de la olla. A Michoacana housewife in East Los Angeles soaked 2 pounds of pintos every Sunday night in a clay olla with onion and a single garlic clove. By Monday, those 2 pounds had become 5.5 pounds. The pot fed 7 people for 3 days. Beans cost 9 cents a pound. The same protein in beef cost 52 cents. By 1950, USDA studies of barrio diets noted that Mexican-American families consumed beans daily and were measurably healthier for it. The government acted surprised. The grandmothers did not. Beans were not a side dish. Beans were the spine. Number 22. The tanda. 12 women on Olvera Street ran a private rotating savings circle every month from 1935 onward. Each woman put $5 into a shared pot. Each month, one woman took the entire $60. They rotated until everyone had received the lump sum. No bank, no interest, no paperwork. By 1950, Sociologists in Los Angeles estimated that 1 in 3 Mexican-American families participated in tandas. Banks called it primitive. The women called it Tuesday. Nobody who ran a tanda lost their savings in 1929. Number 21. The Manda Jar. A Zacatecana grandmother in Pueblo, Colorado, kept a glass jar on the icebox marked with a santo card of San Judas. Every prayer answered, she dropped in a coin. Every favor received, she added another coin. By the time the jar was full, she had $14.80. The money paid for her granddaughter's confirmation dress. For 3 generations of women who could not legally hold a savings account in their own name in many states, until 1960, the Manda jar was both a vow and an account in the same vessel. Faith with a coin slot. Number 20. The garden behind the casita. A Texan abuela in San Antonio's west side turned a 12 by 15-foot strip of dirt into a 3-season pharmacy and grocery. Tomatillos, chiles serranos, epazote, yerba buena, nopales climbing the back fence. Seeds cost 40 cents. The yield replaced $44 in produce between April and October. Across the West Side in the 1940s, public health workers reported that Mexican families ate more fresh greens per capita than any other group in San Antonio. The fence was Texas. Everything inside it was Coahuila. Number 19. The lard rendered at home. A Jalisciense housewife in Phoenix bought a 4-pound slab of pork fat every November for 26 cents. She rendered it slowly in cast iron all afternoon. She ended up with 3-quart jars of manteca and a plate of chicharrones for the children. Cooking oil at the store cost 42 cents a pound. Her manteca cost 7 cents a pound. Her annual savings ran $52. Modern doctors would later warn against lard. The grandmothers who cooked in it lived to 92. The cheap fat was the clean fat. Number 18. The chiles drying on the roof. A New Mexican grandmother in Las Cruces hung ristras of chiles colorados from her porch roof every September. 20 pounds of fresh chiles for $1.10. By Christmas, 4 pounds of dried chile that would have cost $6.80 at the mercado. By 1955, tourists were photographing the ristras as folk art. The women who hung them were not making art. They were making sure February had flavor. Number 17. The molcajete that outlasted 3 husbands. An Oaxacan widow in Fresno bought a volcanic stone molcajete in 1929 for $2.20. She ground every salsa, every mole, every adobo in it for the rest of her life. She died in 1981. The molcajete went to her granddaughter. It still works. The blender her daughter bought in 1968 broke in 1974. The food processor from 1985 broke in 1989. The cheap tool was the durable tool. In 1944, a researcher from the University of Texas spent 18 months among Mexican-American families in San Antonio's West Side. The families he studied earned between $9 and $16 a week. The Anglo families across town earned 3 to 4 times that. The researcher expected to find malnutrition, debt, financial collapse. He found the opposite. Mexican families on $14 a week were saving an average of 22% of income. They owned more household furniture outright. They carried less debt. Their children weighed more at age 5 than the Anglo children. The researcher could not explain it through wages. The variable was the abuelas. 3 generations of women running a system the dominant economy had never bothered to understand. His report was filed, shelved, and never published. Number 16. The tortillas counted, not estimated. A Chihuahuense mother in Albuquerque made exactly 3 tortillas per child per meal, not 4, not 5, 3. A child who wanted a 4th was given more beans. The discipline saved her family 4 pounds of masa harina a month. Across Mexican kitchens of the Southwest, this measured portioning had a name: el peso justo, the just weight, passed mother to daughter without explanation, not a fortune, a foundation. Number 15. The coffee brewed twice. A widow in San Diego brewed her café de olla in the morning with canela and piloncillo. She kept the grounds. In the afternoon, she added a half spoon of fresh coffee to the same grounds and brewed again. Half a pound of coffee that her Anglo neighbor finished in a week, she stretched across 2.5 weeks. National coffee brands ran ads in the 1950s shaming the practice. The grandmothers ignored them. Her children grew up thinking the second pot was the better one. They were right. Number 14. The mended rebozo. A Michoacana grandmother in Watsonville wore the same rebozo for 36 years. She had bought it in 1923 for $1.60. Every fray was darned. Every loose thread was rewoven. When the fringe wore out, she added a new one from yarn unraveled from a worn sweater. The rebozo carried her babies, her market goods, her grandchildren, and her saint candles to church. She bought no replacements. The rebozo was a 36-year contract that paid her back every single day. Number 13. The trade across the fence. 4 families on a single dirt block in Kingsville, Texas, ran a quiet exchange no inspector ever recorded. The Garzas had laying hens. The Mendozas had a cow. The Rivases had a cousin at the slaughterhouse. The Salazars had a husband who could fix any engine. Eggs for milk, milk for tripe, engine work for chickens. Each family reduced cash spending by $58 a year without earning $1 more. The neighbor was infrastructure. Number 12. The nopales from the lot next door. A Sonoran grandmother in Nogales harvested young nopal pads from cactus growing wild in a vacant lot 2 streets over. Every Tuesday morning, she went with a small knife, a folded apron, and 20 pads. The pads fed her family 2 nights a week from March through October. Her Anglo neighbors thought she was poor. She was not poor. She was paying nothing for vegetables that cost 40 cents a bunch at the store. The empty lot was the produce aisle. A Guadalajara abuela in Stockton bought a beef shank for 19 cents and made caldo de res that fed 8 people. She kept the bones. The next day, she boiled them again with leftover vegetables for breakfast. The day after, a 3rd time with garlic into consomme. 1 bone, 3 meals, cost per person across 3 days, just under 4 cents. Modern restaurants now charge $14 for what she called Wednesday. Number 10. The aguas frescas from the peels. A Veracruzana mother in Houston never threw away a watermelon rind, a pineapple core, or a citrus peel. The watermelon rind became cooled agua de sandia. The pineapple cores were boiled with cinnamon into tepache. The orange peels were dried for tea. By 1965, the supermarket beverage aisle was full of bottled drinks made from the same ingredients she pulled out of the garbage. The trash was inventory. The peel was the second harvest. Number 9. The school shoes resoled twice. A Tejano shoemaker in Brownsville fixed his children's school shoes himself at the kitchen table. New soles cut from a worn-out tire, new laces from twine, polish made from lard and lamp black. A pair of children's shoes that should have lasted 1 school year lasted 3. Across 4 children and 12 years, the savings ran $94, 3 months of rent on the small frame house he was paying off. The hammer was a paycheck. A man named Don Refugio died in Santa Ana, California in 2019 at age 94. He crossed from Guanajuato in 1944 as a bracero. He picked oranges, packed lemons, and worked grounds maintenance at a country club for 47 years on wages that never exceeded $4.80 an hour. When his children went through his small stucco house, they found something none of them expected. He owned the house outright. He owned a duplex 2 streets over that he rented to a niece. He had $94,000 in a credit union account, every deposit made in cash. His American-born grandchildren with college degrees and salaries 5 times his were drowning in student loans, car payments, and credit card balances. They had the words for everything Don Refugio never had words for. They had lost his arithmetic. Number 8. The lonche, not the loncheria. A bracero in the Coachella Valley carried his lunch in a folded cloth every day for 38 years. 2 bean tacos, a piece of queso fresco, a small green chile. His co-workers ate at the lunch truck. A truck lunch cost 45 cents in 1956. Across his career, more than $4,200. He spent that $4,200 on a down payment for the small house in Indio his great-grandchildren still own. The cloth bundle on the bench was a deed. Number 7. The sewing circle on the porch. 6 women on a single street in Corpus Christi met on one porch every Thursday from 1939 onward. They brought torn shirts, outgrown dresses, fabric scraps, and 1 pot of canela tea sweetened with the last of someone's piloncillo. They mended for each other and turned old garments into new ones in combinations no single woman could have made alone. Each family saved $28 a year. 6 women with needles outproduced the dry goods store. Number 6. The catechism paid in tamales. A Coahuilense grandmother in Hatch, New Mexico could not afford the $3 monthly catechism fee at the parish. So every Holy Week she made 20 dozen tamales for the parish supper. The pastor counted her labor as payment for her grandchildren's catechism for the year. Across the Mexican Catholic parishes of the Southwest, this arrangement was so widespread that diocesan records sometimes listed it formally as in-kind tuition. The tamale was the tuition. Number 5. The boarder in the back room. A widow in Pharr, Texas, named Alicia took in a single boarder in 1942, a young man from her village in Tamaulipas, who paid $2.50 a week for a cot and 2 meals. He stayed 9 years. When he finally married and left, Alicia had collected $1,170. The money paid off her mortgage. The house is still in her great-granddaughter's name. The empty cot was a wage. Number 4. The money order to Mexico. A father in Bakersfield mailed a $3 money order to his mother in Michoacan every 2 weeks for 26 years. The total ran nearly $2,000. The money paid for medicines, his sister's wedding, and the small concrete block house his cousin still lives in. That money sent away was the money the family in California learned not to spend. Mexican remittances between 1942 and 1964 totaled over $1.6 billion. Number 3. The quinceañera sewn at home. A Zacatecana mother in Denver spent 3 years preparing her daughter's quinceañera dress, yards of satin bought on sale, lace remade from her own wedding mantilla, and beads saved from a broken rosary. Material cost ran $14. A comparable dress at the bridal store cost $90. The dress was worn at the Mass, In the photo and at the reception, it was packed away. 12 years later, it became the baptismal gown for the daughter's first child. One dress, 2 generations. The dress was a bridge between 2 budgets. Number 2, pay the house first. An Oaxacan father in El Centro followed one rule above all others. The first dollars of every paycheck went into a coffee can labeled in pencil, La Casa. Not the last. Not the leftovers. The first. In 1948, he earned $19 a week. He put $5 in the can. In 1958, he earned $34. He put $7. The wage changed. The order never did. By 1969, he owned the house. Then a second house behind it for his oldest son. Then a small lot in Mexicali where he planned to retire. 21 years. American advisors started saying, "Pay yourself first" in the 1980s. Mexican fathers had been paying La Casa first since their grandfathers walked north. Number 1, spend less than you earn. That is the whole rule. No tanda, no comel, no tin under the floor, no system at all. It was the unglamorous, unfashionable, unbreakable discipline of spending less than came in. Every week, every month, for decades, until the gap between what was earned and what was spent became the foundation of everything that came after. A paid-off house, a daughter sent to teach school, a grandson who did not have to pick fruit like his grandfather. Esperanza in San Antonio was not running 24 systems at once. She was practicing one with such fierce consistency that 24 others arranged themselves around it. She spent less than she earned, every week of every year, for 9 years. The tin under the floor was just the receipt. None of these habits required a degree, an advisor, or a bank that would lend to a Brown family in 1944. They required attention, the willingness to look at money honestly, without shame and without fantasy. The grandmothers who crossed the border, and the granddaughters who never had to, understood something modern America has spent 2 generations trying to unlearn. That comfort is not the same as security. That convenience is not the same as freedom. That looking like everyone else was not the same thing as being unbreakable. The women in dark rebozos in the West Side parishes did not look prosperous. They were prosperous in the only way that ever mattered. They could not be reached by hunger. They could not be reached by eviction. They could not be reached by the slow dread that settles into a family when next month is already lost. These were not the habits of the poor. These were the habits of people who refused to be poor again. Esperanza had buried a husband and crossed a state to keep her children. She was not going to let an unwatched dollar take what was left. The tin is still there, under some kitchen floor in some house that has been remodeled twice. The math has not changed. What you keep still matters more than what you earn. Unreachable.